Donald Trump's former personal attorney and fixer, Michael Cohen. He faced a grueling cross-examination this week. Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, berated over his past crimes and repeatedly called him a liar. But some legal experts say Trump's defense team was not able to unravel the prosecution's claim that Donald Trump was aware of the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. Michael Cohen is expected back on the stand for his fourth day on Monday, the 19th day of trial. Joining us now is investigative reporter for the New York Times, Suzanne Craig, and MSNBC legal analyst Catherine Christian. Catherine Christian is the former assistant district attorney for the Manhattan DA's office. Welcome all.
Good morning.
It's like a dramatic pause. It's like, what are you going to ask us about Michael Cohen?
Get the weight of it. Go ahead.
Well, can we start where we ended? Catherine, do you think that it is true that the defense has not been able to unravel the prosecution's assertion yet that Donald Trump was aware of the payments? And what do you think about Michael Cohen's performance, for lack of a better term, this week in court?
Not yet. Well, let me just say, the Manhattan DA's office would have never brought this case and just relying on the testimony of Michael Cohen if they didn't believe that they had enough of what he was going to say corroborated and they had enough circumstantial evidence of guilt. That's why you heard the excerpts from Donald Trump's book, basically describing himself as a micromanager, knowing about the paper clips, reading the invoices from the decorators. That's why you had David Pecker, who was the National Enquirer person at the beginning, basically laying out the whole conspiracy, describing him as detailed-oriented and micromanaging. So what you're going to hear arguing in by the prosecution, really, that Donald Trump did not know what Alan Weisselberg, who reported directly to him, and Michael Cohen, who reported directly to him, he did not know what they were doing. And you have those 11 checks that Donald Trump signed. So that's going to be the prosecution's argument.
Suzanne, one of the things that I thought was pretty interesting in this cross of Michael Cohen was the whole focus on revenge. In fact, you had, the idea that Cohen was singularly focused on this. This was the thing that moved him more than anything else. What was your take regarding the effectiveness of this revenge angle to sort of create that moment of doubt for one juror to say, yeah, really at the end of the day, this brother was just mad.
Right. And I think we have to step back and talk a little bit about Michael Cohen before I get to that, because Michael Cohen is just critical for people who aren't kind of following this minute by minute. He is the person who can set the table for the criminal disguise of the documents. He's the only person. He is the through line. There is a lot of circumstantial evidence, but he has testified to conversations that he had with Donald Trump that go right to the criminality of those documents, the intent. What was Donald Trump's intent? It's a criminal case. It's crucial. So believing Michael Cohen is important. It's not to say that there's not circumstantial evidence, but it's really important for the case. Those conversations are critical. And those tapes, I found them powerful when they were played in court. There was some tapes of Michael Cohen that just go to his revenge modus. I mean, he has been made out as this guy who was so loyal to Donald Trump, he would do everything. And now the defense has turned that and say he is so hell-bent on revenge that he would do anything. And they played some tapes of his podcast in court for the jury. And Michael Cohen was railing about how his family went to jail and he wants to see Trump go to jail, and he was calling him crazy names. I'm sure it had an effect on me. I imagine it's had an effect on the jury. And all of this week was sort of when I think about this week and we were sitting in court, there was a lot of information that was coming at us that really didn't have to do with the case. It had to do with Michael Cohen's credibility. And prosecutors for a while were jumping around. It was frustrating to listen to, but they were going through the various times that he has lied under oath. And it's important because he's lying under oath, just like the implication is he'd be lying on the stand now. But it was all leading to that moment where they tried to discredit him. I think they did an effective job. Whether or not jurors are going to walk away and say, okay, now we're going to just disregard everything Michael Cohen said is an open question. Because as Catherine said, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that backs up what Michael Cohen said.
Because there's the revenge, there is the question of Michael Cohen's credibility as a witness as it relates to previous lies. Sure, but then there was also this exchange about a phone call that really seemed, to your point, about you just need one juror who has a little bit of skepticism. So Todd Blanche, the attorney for Donald Trump, he asked Cohen about this call that happened in 2016. The way that Cohen initially recounts it is that is a conversation that we have specifically about what is at the heart of this case. And then he shows him some text messages that would suggest that they either additionally talked about a personal security issue or that they instead talked about a personal security issue. Do you think that landed with the jury, especially given Blanche's sort of dramatic rendering of it where he says to Cohen, that was a lie?
Well, that landed with the jury because his initial version happened on the direct examination. So the prosecution brought out that this was the time that you spoke to Donald Trump about Stormy Daniels. Yes. And then it turns out on cross, well, actually, there was this 14-year-old that I was concerned about, so that's why I really was contacting Keith Schiller, and here are these text messages that were around the same time. So it called into doubt what he said on direct examination. So now it's up to the prosecutor on redirect to rehabilitate him.
So how do you do that?
Can't, well, if there's either going to have to be he made a mistake. I always would say to my witnesses, if they testify in the grand jury, they were on the south side of the street and it turned out it was on the north side, I say, so you made a mistake in the grand jury, correct? I mean, I don't know whether or not this could be blamed on Mr. Cohen or the prosecution for failure to accurately prep and just say to him, wait a minute, how could you have done that when we have these text messages? So they have to clear it up on redirect examination. If they don't, that's a problem.
Can we put it up on the screen while you're talking through it? Because we have that part of the transcript because literally Todd Blanche is like yelling. This is from the Daily Beast, but this is from the transcript. Todd Blanche is saying that was a lie. He's raising his voice, jabbing the pen in his right hand, accusatorially at Cohen. You did not talk to President Trump all that night. You admit it. And then Cohen, no, sir, I can't because I'm not certain that's accurate.
Probably because he was sitting there saying, I don't remember those text messages. And he's sort of thinking. And that's why I said, was that a failure of preparation on the part of the prosecution of him and not finding the text messages the same way that the defense did and say to him, well, weren't you also texting about the 14-year-old? And that's also the same time you're talking about Stormy Daniels? So the prosecution has to clear that up on their redirect.
So that says to me that, again, while everything up to this moment seemed to really kind of lay down some good predicates for the prosecution, the defense, despite how they started off making it about, about himself, they landed. They landed some good punches against Cohen in their cross-examination of him, to the point that Catherine says, there's going to have to be some redirection here. We're going to have to clean some stuff up on aisle 9 because there was some spillage that no one seemed to account for. How does that, I guess in one sense you could say maybe the jury's unfazed by it and they have sort of started to bake this cake in a certain way that, it's still a little soft in the middle, but it's pretty tight. For the prosecution, or is this a point where you sit back and go, there are a number of lanes here in which you could see this case sort of go a little bit longer in terms of its decision by the jury. In other words, they're not going to come out, oh yeah, he's guilty, but there is some reasonable doubt that's been created.
Well, I like your grocery store analogy. Maybe I just have to go shopping later, but I like kind of there's a spill on aisle 9, but aisle 10 and 11 and 4, 5, and 6, I think still look pretty good for the prosecution. But it is a tricky thing because Michael Cohen, I want to say, and because I know people aren't watching sort of necessarily paying attention to this every day. He was a good witness. He's known as being very volatile. There was a lot of concern coming into this that he may erupt. He's been talking about the case against the advice of prosecutors while the case has been going on. I thought he was a good witness, but you got to give credit where credit's due to the defense that they did land this this one. Particularly this one punch on him about this call, and the defense the prosecution didn't apparently prepare him for it. He had forgotten, I think, about the 14-year-old. There's two things. One is he'd forgotten about these prank calls that he was getting. It was allegedly a 14-year-old, and he called Keith Schiller about that. And there's text messages that confirm that seemed to be at least top of mind for Michael Cohen on this call. The other possibility is that Michael Cohen is lying on the stand. These are conversations that happen between Michael Cohen and Donald Trump, and that's why it's so important that jurors believe Michael Cohen on this. But there are other calls that Michael Cohen made to Donald Trump, multiple ones that the defense hasn't questioned him on. We still have a bit of cross-examination left on Monday morning, but they've been very careful, or even not even careful. They haven't so far waded into a lot of what Michael Cohen has said about the heart of the case, and there is corroborating witnesses on a lot of it, and I think that's what prosecutors are banking on.